I think that gamers are entitled, in the same way I think that anyone who has a hobby with the initial investment being more than $500 is also entitled. I'm looking at you, Lacrosse and Warhammer 40,000. Hello, my name is Jonathan Rosenblum, head game critic at Tibbs TV, and I don't think it's a horrible thing to be entitled, especially if you're gonna drop a shit ton of money. You should squeeze every hour of fun out of that money. And gaming is one of the few hobbies where you could drop around $300 for a Series S and $15 for Game Pass and get way more than 315 hours out of that investment. Gaming can be a great deal, unless of course we're talking about VR gaming, which is hilarious because PC VR gamers are literally some of the most entitled gamers I have ever heard. And I think that's the end result of having to spend an entire month's worth of rent on your system. But it can be worth it. PC VR just needs more games. And with this drought of good VR games, it didn't make any sense to me that fans would turn on Hitman's new and free VR mode. Especially because Hitman seems like a game that is built for VR. It has slow gameplay, stunning maps that model the real world, and an emphasis on interacting with that world. I'm surprised the Deads didn't charge for this upgrade, because they totally could have. But people still got mad at this free new game mode because, well, PC VR gamers are incredibly entitled. So today, we're going to compare the poorly received Hitman VR port to the current darling of VR, Resident Evil. Now, there's lots of reasons for this comparison. Whether it's because Resident Evil 7 had a PSVR mode that was exclusive for a time, or the fact that Resident Evil 4 just recently was ported to Quest 2, or even doubly on the fact that Resident Evil 2 REmake just got a VR mod for PC. Or maybe it's the fact that every other VR game seems to be some sort of shit version of Resident Evil. So it would only make sense to compare what is the best assassinations game to the best zombie game. Right? I mean, they also have a bunch of other stuff in common too, like, well, for Hitman, its biggest weakness is its translation of the features from 2D to VR. For this, I blame Sony, because the first version of this game was played with a DualSense controller, and if you're wondering how that works, it doesn't. But the devs did add new motion controls, right? And they work great, right? Well, they do, except for shooting and throwing. I can normally forgive sloppy shooting in a Hitman game because in Hitman, if you are shooting at someone, then you are le bad at the game and you must have been caught doing something that you shouldn't have been caught doing. But the reason I can't let the shooting slide is because they also didn't nail the throwing, and the throwing is 100% needed in Hitman. Well-placed coins are key to distracting guards and for paying homeless people. So why on God's green earth does it feel so shitty to throw items in this game? And that's a valid reason, but it really shouldn't feel this bad because it pulls you out of the immersion so fast when you motion to throw something and it just drops out of your hand. And this really stands out because everything else feels pretty good, including doming people with objects, which is the other half of Hitman's gameplay. Next up to judge Hitman are its maps. And these maps are fantastic. They're incredibly populated, and it's just so nice that you're able to go back in the levels from Hitman 1 and 2 in VR. Do I wish I could interact with more objects in the world? Absolutely. But I don't care because I'm too busy getting lost in a nightclub after drinking a salty tequila in Berlin. Which brings me to the general vibe of the game. It's perfect for VR. This game is all about doing goofy stuff to kill people, getting caught doing said goofy stuff, and then having to do even goofier stuff to get uncaught, often at the expense of many NPC lives. And there's something that feels so good when you're in this realistic world, dragging a body and turning a corner, only to have a guard spot you. Because in real life, you're on your knees dragging a fake body and you know how stupid you look. It's even funnier when you have to pull out your gun and shoot the guard 3 times in the head. It's an absolute vibe that translates so well to VR. Now for the Resident Evil 2 mod. Resident Evil has proven itself perfect for VR. It has slow gameplay, stunning maps, and an emphasis on not just being spooked, but on solving environmental-based puzzles that are a joy to play out. And does the VR mod do an amazing job of implementation? I would say it's on the quality of Skyrim VR. It's good out of the box, but it really needs a little more tweaking and a little more mods to get it going just right. But remember, the devs are awesome, and they've linked a lot of these mods and guides on the site for the main mod. And once you get it up to snuff, the interactivity feels about on par with Hitman, but not quite above it, as the knife attacking feels about as good as throwing, and knife attacking is critically important to Resident Evil. So how does the world of Resident Evil look within the mod? Great. I'd say honestly even a little bit better than Hitman. Everything looks incredibly clear and stacks up well against games like Hitman and Half-Life Alyx, but with far better acting and far better models throughout. And this all plays into the overall spooky vibe of the game, which is great for VR, but it's not quite perfect. And I want to be clear, this is not the fault of the VR devs. This is based on the design of the general game itself. It's much harder to traverse through the police station in first person. And while there are still those massive cinematic moments in the cutscenes, I never really lost myself in the gameplay like I did when I played through Hitman. But then again, maybe I'm just the type of guy that prefers strangling people with piano wire instead of doming fellas with my Glock. Who knows? So who's better between the Hitman VR mode, and the Resident Evil 2 VR mod? Well, the answer's simple. It's the Resident Evil 4 remake for the Quest. Unlike Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4 is more of an action game and less of a spook fest. And in this current VR landscape where every game seems to be some sort of horror or zombie survival game, it is so refreshing to play a game where it's built around you dual wielding a shotgun in one hand and a pistol in the other. It's a balls to the wall knife and shoot fest that feels fast and tight. But even then, Resident Evil 4 doesn't really translate perfectly for VR, as you have to zoom out of first person every single time you do a kick, and I'm gonna be honest, this game looks like shit. They really didn't do a damn thing to the visuals, and as a result, it feels like you're playing the role of Leon Kennedy in a Resident Evil 4 movie, rather than being in the game yourself. The plus side is, that's a role I've always wanted to play since I played it on the Nintendo Wii. This feels like the next step up from the Wii version, just like the Wii version felt like a step up from the PS2 version. But at the end of the day, if you're a PC VR user, you should absolutely play the Resident Evil 2 VR mod, and you should absolutely play through Hitman in its new VR mode. Are any of these games perfect? No, but they're all a ton of fun, and we shouldn't necessarily be turning our noses up at every developer who's willing to take the time to actually port their official versions over instead of what the Resident Evil team did with Resident Evil 7. Or turn your thumb up at them. Who cares? You paid a ton of money for this, and your opinion matters. With the Game Standard here at Tibbs TV, I'm Jonathan Rosenberg.